When you log on to social media, it's so important to know that you're really only getting half the story. Entrepreneur and fashion blogger Lars, known on Instagram as Living Like Lars, started a nonprofit named just that. Hashtag Half the Story is now a global platform whose mission is to empower the next generation's relationship with social media through advocacy, education, and providing access to resources for youth. Half the Story believes digital wellness starts with education. So, Lars, welcome. We're so excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. It's such an honor to be part of PS I Love You Day. And I think especially something that we need to hear more than ever during the pandemic.
Lars, what essentially inspired you? Let's go way back when. Why did you get on social media in the first place?
I remember I got on social media when I was 18 years old. I remember my first Instagram post. It was because I was going to college and everyone was going to be connecting on social media, Instagram and Facebook, and I wanted to meet friends. But I started taking social media very seriously when I got to college because I wanted to start a fashion blog and ultimately work in the fashion world. And that was my way to really build my platform. And then I dove in as Living Like Lars, but which I'm sure we'll get into, the story that I told was so different from my reality and what was going on behind the screen, which really was ultimately the inspiration for Half the Story.
So then that leads me right into the next question. What inspired you to create Half the Story?
I started Half the Story, quite honestly, because I almost lost my own life to my battle with depression. And I had everything together on social media. I had gotten into my dream school. I had a full-time business and fashion blog, but behind the scenes, I was dealing with crippling anxiety and depression. I couldn't get out of bed. I lost my best friend who was my roommate because she just couldn't put up with me anymore. And I had no choice but to face the reality which I was facing, which was really my struggle between life and death. And in that moment, it was my turning point in realizing that what I was dealing with on a macro, for me, a micro level, was something that our world was dealing with on a macro level, which was really the pressures of social media and the intersection of how that impacted our emotional well-being. And so I decided to rewrite my story. I shut down my fashion blog after I was able to get support from the PCC, the psychiatric center on campus. And I told the other part of my story, which was the other half of the story, the much more authentic one. And what I realized in that one story was the power of storytelling and the beauty of social media and the beauty of connecting authentically. And we had over 30,000 young people from around the world start sharing their stories too. And so that was really the beginning of the global movement. And, now through our work with young people, we've realized that it's not just about advocacy, but it's also about education. And so we're creating programs for schools to help young people develop healthier relationships with tech from the start. And we also have the Global Day of Unplugging every year, which is another wonderful day that, just like PS I Love You, the first Saturday in August, to just stop and reflect and re-identify our own relationships with tech.
And, I find myself scrolling through social media so much, especially during, 2021, 2020, just endlessly scrolling. And so what would be your advice to someone who finds themselves an hour later still scrolling on their phone? How can they use social media more of a positive way as opposed to those endless scrolling?
That's a great question. And we describe your relationship to technology very similarly to your relationship with nutrition. There are both healthy and unhealthy ways to consume technology. And the most important question you have to ask yourself before you get on your phone or your computer is your why. Why am I here? What am I hoping to gain from this? Am I here to connect? Am I here to create? Or am I here to consume? And by having a very clear intention of why you are here on that platform, oftentimes you can leave feeling much more fulfilled rather than depleted. And although that's, the grand scheme and not everyone can get there overnight, I think that there's also a couple of very small things that you can do for yourself to help with creating that. And one thing that I did is I actually documented my social media use once for 5 days about 3 years ago. And what I realized is that 70% of the time that I spent on social media was passive. I wasn't actively trying to learn something. I wasn't actively trying to do something. And that was the light bulb moment of, wow, like this thing is filling space that I should be having with myself. This thing is filling space for the relationships in my life. This thing is getting in between me and my physical activity and my relationship with others in the world. And that is really, I think, the challenge, is that in this time where we only have our technology, to understand and define the line so that we can still have a healthy relationship with our own selves and our own identities, so that we can better connect with others. And, there's so many things that you can do. And I really believe that small steps every day can make a big difference over time. There are a couple of things that have really helped me. First and foremost, having screen-free meals with your family, with your friends, and encouraging them to, put their phones or their tech in the center if you're, of course, socially distant and meeting up, so that you can have that connected conversation. To not use your iPhone or your iPad or whatever that is as your alarm clock, because you should really start and end your day without tech. But I think, the last thing is that there's a lot of amazing ways that you can actually hack your phone to take back your life, because technology was not designed to support our emotional well-being. In fact, what we've seen from things like the social dilemma is that technology was built to capitalize on our own psychological awareness. And so we have a lot of tips on Half the Story to help you do that, like grayscale, like putting away message for your texts, the art of tidying up notifications, all of those things. But hopefully a few of those tips will be helpful for you all.
Oh, that was great.
No, that's seriously.
I gotta do that myself.
I'm like thinking of all the tips that I need to do personally.
Yeah.
How to make sure I become, just like making sure. It's so easy to get caught up like with emails, get caught up like just, mindlessly searching. Someone's like, I need to find something, and you automatically will feel this need that you want to help them and look everything up. And
yeah,
absolutely. And I think another thing is like, go back to the analog, make a list of, every day there's so many pressures that we have as young people to perform, to do all of these things. And there's also like this immense loss, this collective grief that we're experiencing. And it's so easy to get lost and use screens as a coping mechanism for our own emotions. But one of the things that I am starting in 2021 is that every day I have 3 big rocks in my personal life and my professional life. And these 3 big rocks are the 3 things that I need to do to leave that day feeling accomplished. And then I also monitor my mood. And so that ideally over a month span, I can see, okay, what did I actually get to feel accomplished on these days? Like, how did that impact my mood? All of those things, because right now, having that structure is going to be so critical to maintaining overall well-being, especially if you're on online school, even if you're at school and you're dealing with a lot of the struggles and the stresses in your family as a result of the pandemic that we're all living in.
No, that's such a good point. So now, we're going through, you are giving such great advice. Like, what's the first step someone could take? Say like, you're addicted to your phone, you're spending hours on it, and you're going through the social media platforms. Like, what's the first thing for someone in high school, someone in even middle school, college level? What's something that they can do to really just like spearhead the next step to make sure that they're going on a better social path?
Well, first and foremost, like anything in the mental health space or health in general, that awareness is you should be proud. If you're sitting here and you're watching this and you feel like you need to reimagine your relationship with technology, first, I will tell you you're not alone. But second, I will tell you you're a rock star. There's many ways that I'll share some small steps today that you can do to start with pulling back on that. But also, we do have a teen community at Half the Story where we do offer training and we offer youth advocacy programs so that you can learn to be a digital wellness activist within your own school and own community to help pioneer this mission. Because ultimately, we can't do this alone. I can't do this without you two. This is a whole collective movement, and we have to inspire each other to propel change in this world. So first things first, you think you have a technology problem. This is what you need to do. Get a notebook, track And we have a whole exercise. We developed a guide for COVID-19. If you want to print it out and use our template, you're more than welcome to. Track your technology use for 2 days. Through this, you should not only track what you're doing, but whether or not you had an intention for it and how you felt after you left your technology. Do that. And then about 5 days, 3 days later, sit back and look at all of your technology documented. Look at your screen time, look at all the way that you felt, and just start nixing things off. Take the things away that don't serve you. You know, the more clutter you have on your phone, the more tabs you have open, the more tabs that are open in your mind. So then just start deleting. You know, get rid of the apps that don't serve you, make it hard to access your social media applications. Unfollow and mute the people in your life that are making you feel less than, because you are enough. And social media has this amazing power to make us feel like we're not enough and we need to consume and do all of these things to prove ourselves to the world. So just start trimming the fat, trimming the things that don't serve you, and make these small changes. You know, start your day with a journal, end your day with a journal. Don't sleep with your phone in your room. Put it in the kitchen. Give it to your parents and say, Mom and Dad, I don't want to have my technology before bed, but I'm really having a hard time with this. Can we work together as a family to come up with certain guidelines? Can we make a special place in the house? And also, you know, set realistic expectations with your friends. We don't need to respond to Snapchats and TikToks and everything all day, every day. We really have to prioritize and have dates with ourselves, whether that's reading, creating, playing sports. And I say that as a young person because I think when I was in high school and in grade school, you know, I was lucky because I didn't grow up in grade school with technology other than AIM, which AIM was a time I used to always put my crush in.
100%.
We lived the AIM days.
We were in the AIM days, and I used to use AIM as my way to connect with my crushes and go in chat rooms. I never really felt less than. Maybe I was bullied a couple of times, which, you know, I've written that off and paved my own path anyways. But, you know, as a high schooler, you know, I really started to experience the pressure of social media and not fitting in or not wanting to participate in these things that I knew that wouldn't
We
suit
all
me.
have, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's the most important relationship you can have is with yourself, first and foremost. And what we've learned, and we did do a survey from 1,000 of our teens during the pandemic, and 90% of them said they didn't feel like they had control over their technology use. But 70% of them said that they were willing to develop a healthier relationship with it. And, you know, you have to help your parents also as well, because so many of us, you know, as these future leaders of the next generation, we have to educate and empower the people around us. And I believe in every single one of you that are here on this day. And I would love for you, if you're interested, you can, you know, come be a part of Half the Story. You can look on Instagram at Half the Story, TikTok, wherever you feel comfortable, and come find your way into our virtual community, which we're building. And we're going to be offering a lot of free mental health tools and tips and therapy and all of that stuff. So we'll be sure to get the link out there to all of you. But I'm just so grateful that, you know, you guys even have me here and are asking me about these things.
And I think that, you know, the relationship with social media comes a lot of responsibility. And, you know, it's like choosing, okay, I have to go to virtual class, I have to put my phone down. You know, then when you see something on social media, it immediately prompts you to want to pay attention to it. And one thing that could come up is a bullying situation, or, you know, calling someone out. And, you know, on TikTok, even though content is filtered and you can't post, you know, keywords for harassment, it still does come up. And so what do you think is the biggest advice that you have for someone that can help in a bullying situation, but also sort of, you know, do something and then put it away? You get caught up in it, and you want to help, you know, your whole life is ultimately, you know, it controls it.
Absolutely. And, you know, what I would say is that the most real action happens in the real world. And so it's very easy to get caught into these social platforms that we don't have control over. The worst thing that you can do is fan the flames of a bully and give that bully more power and give them more strength to take down someone. In a situation, if someone is being bullied, the best advice that I have for you is that if you see what is happening, you need to first report it to the social platform. Secondly, reach out to the individual and advise that hey, stand up for this person. There should be no discrimination in the world that we're living in today. And some people are going through so much pain that they don't understand, what those rules even are. But the third thing is if someone is really hurting and they are bullied and their mental health is at stake, you need to bring this to a teacher, you need to bring this to a parent, and you need to bring this to the school, because no one should have to live in digital distress. And all of us that are here and watching this have the power to change that by not just watching, but to do something. So report, tell someone, and speak up, because you will be the future leader by doing so, and you might save someone's life.
1,000,000%. You will save someone's life by, sharing something that you see on social media or sticking up for the person. But at the bottom line, make sure too, at least I think, that you have to make sure your mental well-being is, under control. And if you're seeing something or you're getting responses on social media, perhaps that you don't think are right, where do you go for that? Should you continue to stay on social media? Should you, report it?
What I always say is screenshot the evidence, say what you need to say, report, and disengage.
That's great.
I think the longer that you stay engaged, the worse it's going to be for your own mental well-being. And evidence speaks louder than anything. So just get proof of that evidence, because that bully might delete it, the social platform might take it down, but you're going to need that when you speak to your teacher or your parent or your school to make sure that the right story is told, because social media can be a game of telephone, and evidence and data is really the most important thing. And you had a great point. You have to protect your own mental well-being. And not all of us are able to, take this role on, and you shouldn't feel like you need to save anyone, but you should feel like you have the tools and the resources to tell someone to help save someone, because it can be very, very, very daunting and challenging as a young person, especially if you're not even quite sure of what the whole story is. And so I would also say that too, is don't put all the weight on yourself, but take advantage of the resources in your school to make sure that the right people are involved in the conversations that need to be.
Yeah. And so, one last question is, what would be the advice for someone who's going through a hard time right now?
Man, well, first of all, I think my advice would be, before advice, I think, the shadow pandemic of what we're experiencing is the mental health pandemic. And if you're feeling any type of way, you're certainly not alone. The most important thing is to have an ongoing dialogue with the people that you love about mental health before it gets bad. Make your conversations about physical health as, hey, how are you feeling? Are you sick? Just as normalized as your conversations about mental health. Start asking your friends about where they are and where they're at, so that when things get hard, you can connect with that person, but that you also feel comfortable with sharing that with your friends, because they're your best advocates. Your parents are your best advocates. Everyone has different dynamics and relationships with the ones that they love in their life. And the most important thing we can do is learn how to ask the right questions, but then also make sure that we're pointing individuals to the right resources. And there's so many fantastic resources out there. Teen Line is a fantastic resource. Crisis Text Line is an amazing resource. And I know that a lot of schools have individual social workers, and we all need to get familiar with the resources that are right in front of us, but also the resources that are accessible to all of us. And so I would just encourage you all, and I'm sure that this day is going to spark the conversation at all the schools watching this, but don't be afraid to say what you're really feeling, and don't be afraid to ask for help before you even think you need it. Because oftentimes, if you're feeling that way, it means you're already sick. And mental health is like physical health. A cold can become something so much worse if you don't start taking yourself from the beginning. And as someone that struggled with this as a 16-year-old and has been battling my entire life, I'm here to just encourage that. Like, we're all humans. We can't exist without our brains, and we can't exist without our bodies, and mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yeah, you're so right. And you're, half the story is such a good point, because there is, like, we need to be talking more about what's going on. We need to be talking more about what's going on behind closed doors, that you don't know. There might be a room of 20 people and 5 people might be going through deep depressions, but you would never know unless we start talking about it.
Absolutely. And, even too, social media is only half the story. People that use don't take social media at face value. Someone looks happy, it doesn't mean they are happy. And that's why taking conversations offline in the real world, calling a friend, going on a socially distanced walk, that one-on-one human connection when you're not on this micro stage that everyone is watching is so important. And I hope we all can really make time for that, but also to just check in with ourselves. When you wake up, how are you feeling? How are you really doing? When you go to bed, how are you feeling? How are you really doing? Make sure to check in with these emotions over time, because sometimes if we don't address them and we keep putting them under the rug, kind of like when we don't want to do our laundry and we put it under our bed, it gets to be a really tricky situation. So be proactive, not reactive.
I love that.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Well, Larissa or Lars, thank you so much for joining us, the founder of Half the Story. Be sure to check her out on Half the Story on social media, on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, and all those social media platforms. Thank you so much.
Thank you.